Today I'm going to talk to you about 3 keys that I want to give you to transform your math teaching experience and your kids' math learning experience. Those 3 keys are so important for every math learner, and one of them is place value. It is fundamental to understanding how math works. Base 10 thinking, base 10 strategies are also just foundational. And number sense as a whole. And I'm going to talk to you today about what those are, but also give you some specific strategies to address each of those 3 areas that you can use starting tomorrow in your homeschool and just already see a difference in how your kids process their mental math and understand what it means. The Professor B Math program really addresses how kids learn math. It develops the part of the brain to help them learn math more easily. It develops the spatial perceptual part, the spatial memory, and spatial manipulation of content and holding things in their right places. And so we've seen through the program, even 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders who can outperform 9th graders on algebra tests. There was a wonderful study back in the 1990s in New York State where the New York City schools used Professor V in the school system, and psychologists measured these results, and over through the 3 or 4 years of this research project, these 5th graders outperformed those 9th graders. It's amazing how it works. So a little about me. My name is Molly Shaw. I'm a professionally certified educational therapist, so I'm getting to learn a lot about the cognitive neuroscience of math and how kids learn. I have a master's degree in exceptional student education. I homeschooled for 20 years. I have 6 children, 2 with disabilities, and I taught in the public school for 5 years and also in a private school. In addition, I run my own tutoring company as well as having multiple co-ops, 3 different states. I ran homeschooling co-ops where I hired teachers and selected curriculum, wrote curriculum, and just have a wonderful experience and journey in learning how kids learn and the best ways to teach them. So let me tell you my Professor B story. I met Professor Barrett in the 90s at a homeschooling conference in Denver. Prior to that, I had been teaching in the public school, and I never was very confident in myself as a math kid. Even in 4th grade, my teacher kind of made fun of me for not getting long division more easily and made me feel really ashamed and embarrassed of myself and kind of convinced me I didn't really have the math brain. So I was very timid and lacked confidence. Even in college, I was going to become a veterinarian. I attended Texas A&M, but I failed algebra first semester, second semester, 3 times. Third semester, I failed Algebra 1. So I had to change my major, and I kind of gave up on my dream because I was so discouraged. And I went to tutoring every night. They had free tutoring. I did everything I knew how to do, but it didn't make sense. I could not understand the why behind these memorized formulas. It just really wouldn't stick with me because I couldn't understand the why. And so I'm homeschooling now, 10 years later. I have 4 or 5 little kids. I'm walking down the aisle at the Denver conference looking for math. What am I going to do about math? And I saw Dr. Barrett in his booth. He had about 4 or 5 moms sitting in a little circle, and he was teaching them their multiplication facts of the 17s facts family. And I just stood and watched. It was so different. It was oral interaction. They were smiling and laughing and clapping along. There was a cadence. It was more like a game atmosphere to learning these multiplication facts. And I could see how effectively it was stimulating the meaning behind what the next number should be or would be, rather than just using a rote memorization strategy. And I thought, well, this is what I'm going to try. I'm going to try this next. So I bought the program, and that was the beginning of my journey to work with Professor B. I wonder if you've ever had a lack of confidence about teaching math. Maybe you weren't a math guru either, wasn't your best subject. Or maybe you're like my friend I met last week. She said she is actually a math specialist and works at the highest level training teachers, but said that she was also a type of kid, a math student who could just memorize easily and always get the right answer. But it wasn't until she met Dr. Barrett and saw his strategies that she had this aha opening moment that she just like, I never knew the why behind all of these math skills that I thought I was so good at. And it really rocked her world. And she found a whole new way of teaching after meeting him, too. So you might be like that. I had a little boy named Joey I tutored. He was a fifth grader and he was in a special project based school, it's kind of a charter school. And he was so afraid of math. He did not think he could learn it. He had such strong negative self talk. He was constantly just, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. I'll never learn this. Just, oh, he was so discouraged. And I actually went to his school and worked with him there in the classroom. And he would just crawl under the table and cry. It was the most difficult subject for him emotionally. I began working with him on Professor B's strategies. We worked a lot on multiplication facts. We used the count buys strategy and on the long division strategy. I worked with him for a couple of years, but after only about 6 months or so of working with him only once a week at home, he began to understand the patterns and understand the number sense and get the meaning behind what he was learning. And he had new ways to come up with the answers rather than having to just search his memory and come up with it. And he is now a 10th grader and he is at a STEM high school and he's an honors student. And his math is his favorite subject. And he made a complete turnaround as a result of the Professor B strategies. So let me show you the first key. I want to talk about number sense. What is number sense? Number sense is not just for little 4 and 5-year-olds. Number sense not only is what does 5 mean? A 5 is a 3 and a 2. A 5 is a half of a 10. 5s are easy to count by because they always end in a 5 or a 0. These are kind of the characteristics of fiveness. And that is part of our sense of 5. But as we get older, we also have this mental sketch pad where we hold things in place value. We know what the quantity is. When I say 5,000 or 50,000, we have a sense of scale. We have a sense of size. And all of that is part of number sense. Understanding relationships between fractions, equivalent fractions, and knowing that understanding clearly that 1/2 and 2/4 have the same parts of the whole relationship and being able to visualize that is number sense. You have a concept of the quantity, the space, and the amount, and how those are moving and changing in a real clear way. So one of the best ways to develop number sense is through something I call count buys. Many kids learn to do skip counting, where they repeat over and over their multiples by just saying 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. But even 2-year-olds can often recite these. That doesn't mean they have the number sense of what those numbers mean. And count buys will develop the number sense. So here's the strategy. The first thing I do is I say, hey, say I'm talking to a 3rd, 4th, 5th grader. Can you count by 5s? Sure, I can count by 5. Okay, show me, count by 5. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 30. Oh, that's awesome. Now, can you go backwards? I may only have them go up maybe 10 places or so to like 50, and then they come back. And I go, great. Okay, so now let's do the same thing. Let's count by 5s, but instead of starting at 0, let's start with 1. And sometimes I'll do this with them with a game where I say a number, they have to say the next number. Sometimes I just have them recite it on their own. Or even if you have a group, you can have them all doing it with a certain kind of cadence or rhythm. Or you can pass the ball from one person to the next and see who's going to break that cadence, so you can kind of start really slow. What is it going to be? It's 6, 11, 16, 21. Do they see the pattern? Do they see the 5 plus 1 more pattern? Do they recognize the multiples of the 5s plus 1? Again, the patterns that are established in that mental number line become so meaningful with this type of activity. When you're starting with the littles, the little 4 and 5-year olds, you can use your hands and you can say, "Can you count by twos?" And they're going to go, "Sure." You can say 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Great. Can you go backwards? 10, 8, 6, 4, 2. What if we started at 1? Could you add 2? Let's count by twos, but start at 1. What do we have if we have 1 and we add 2? They'll say 3. Add 2, 5. Add 2, 7. Add 2, 9. So you can support them also doing count bys at a very young age. For older kids, we can do count bys with multiple digit numbers. What if we started with 2,224 and we count up by 11s? We count backwards by 200s. Again, developing count bys is power. It is mental math power. You can also count by with fractions. What if we started at 10 and counted backwards by 1 and 1/2? 10, what would that be? 8.5? What would that be? 7? Again, it takes a lot of thinking and problem solving and creative thinking to do these count bys. It is a little gym mental muscle workout, and they end up understanding how numbers work and how they relate. So that's your first skill for developing number sense. I do count bys as warm-ups on almost all my sessions. It doesn't take very long. It's great if you can get them up on their feet, talking out loud, and do it in a cadence and tossing a ball, because again, it's going to integrate a lot of different parts of that brain, and it's going to really reinforce the meaning and the understanding for them of their math sense. So maybe you might be concerned that you don't want to be the teacher. You really want to put something on the screen and so somebody else is going to teach the math, and you're just going to be making sure they're following and they're on the right lesson and they are answering the questions. Let me assure you that if I could teach this, you can teach it. I was so unprepared and I lacked so much confidence. But the cool thing about the books and the little PowerPoint versions is they're scripted for you. They literally tell you word for word what you're going to say. And research has shown that the teacher is the key to student performance. Student achievement is dependent on the teacher, on her expectations, on her engagement, on her enthusiasm, and how she responds to the child in the moment through mediated learning activities, adjusting the challenge, adjusting the motivation, adjusting the wording, and helping that child achieve everything. You are uniquely equipped to teach your children. God has given them to you and given you the gifts and the ability to understand them like no one else can. And a prepackaged program is not going to work perfectly for all kids. Professor B is self-paced, where you decide how long to camp on each skill, and you can move more quickly or you can go more slowly. You can even skip over a part or two, and it's embedded in a contextual story where one comprehension of this skill grows right out of the one from before it, and it makes sense to the kids. Again, I really encourage you to consider this. You're going to sit and read the script, and you can do this. You can do this for sure, because I figured it out myself. It's kind of fun. I have taught Professor B Math in several different school settings with mixed age groups, lots of times one-on-one with tutoring, and also with my own 6 children. And so I've been through it several times, and I have to say that it is fun because the kids are up on their feet, they're interacting at the whiteboard, and the instruction is done more in an oral presentation fashion. It's oral rehearsal. If you know the psychologist Vygotsky and his theory of learning, that oral has to come before anything written. And so if the kids can express it and explain it to you and do it orally with you multiple times, the workbook actually becomes just a secondary reinforcement. It really isn't a tool for introducing or teaching any of the skills. Let me go back to my story. So after I had been using Professor B for some time, probably the second year, I remember sitting at my kitchen table with my children as I was reading through the script. And I had this moment where I was struck by the beauty of the patterns of math for the very first time. I saw God's fingerprint in it. I saw the connectivity of it. I saw the enormity, the eternity of it. I saw how it worked together so beautifully. And I just felt almost like this inner healing of my math trauma. And I broke into tears. And I remember just crying at the table in front of my children who were like just staring at me. And I'm like, it's so beautiful. And that was a turning point for me. It really changed my own relationship to math. And it was no longer a chore I had to do with them. It was something I was looking forward to because I could tell it was opening my eyes to seeing things that I hadn't seen before. So today, I want you to have the opportunity to experience Professor B Math. I hope you can have a part of the type of experience I had. And with your permission at the end, I would love to make you a little offer to maybe look at the store and give you a discount code so you can get a discount if you would be interested in purchasing as a result of this webinar today. Let me tell you about another student I had where it was a remarkable program for her. It was a little girl named Marley. She came to the private school where I was working as a learning specialist in the 5th grade. She had been homeschooled prior to that, and her parents humbly admitted that she had had no math for 2 years. So she's coming into 5th grade, very rigorous classical school, which is ahead by a year on their math program, and she has really got some big gaps. She's a smart little girl, and she could understand the instruction in the 5th grade classroom, but she still did not know her addition, subtraction, multiplication facts. She just didn't have any of these skills down. So I began working with her and her mom, showing them the Professor B program once a week. They would go home and practice the skills that I showed them to work on. And that little cookie, she was like in 3 months, she had nailed her multiplication facts, and she was able to fully understand. And after 4 months, she was able to transition directly into 5th grade. I mean, it was amazing. And her dad came into my office it was probably in November, a couple of months ago, and she's now in 7th grade. And he was like, I got to tell you this. She's in pre-algebra. She just made 100 on her test. She was the only student that made 100. And he was so proud of her because he knew how hard she worked when she first got here to catch up to be a part of that class and to keep up. And now here she was leading grade-wise in that particular classroom. So I know how great this is for kids who just need enrichment, encouragement to kind of level up. It can also accelerate kids, and it's also amazing for kids who have learning differences. So let me give you the second key. The second key is place value. Place value is, of course, understanding the base 10 system and understanding how we work. So I'm going to give you a little demo using my camera. So I'm going to switch to my document camera here. Make sure you can see that. And I'm going to teach you something called the long way multiplication strategy. Dr. Barrett's method depends on what he calls truth-telling in mathematics. Truth-telling means you're going to say the correct place value name of every digit. We're not going to use the shortcut by just calling it by its number name. So when I give the kids a longer multiplication problem, and again, this is very, very early in the second book when they can be even in 2nd grade, I'm going to ask the kids this question. I'm going to say, what is this 2 represent? And they're going to say, I don't know, 2. I go, that's right. Can we say 2 ones? And they'll say, 2 ones. That's right. So if we have 2 ones and we have 5 ones. How many do we have? We have 2 groups with 5 in each group. And they're going to say we have 10. I'm going to say that's right. And we're going to write the answer to that on its own line. A lot of times I have the children copy this off the whiteboard onto their own whiteboard or their own paper. And again, they learn to begin to develop their own mental line system, their own grid, so that they can learn to keep their places lined up. Then I say, if we have 2 groups of this, what is this called? And they always say 4. I go, no, it's not a 4. And they just look at me, and then I'm like, oh, it's 40. That's right. So I say, we're going to look at 2 groups of 40. What is 2 groups of 40? 2 groups of 40 is 80. Very good. Then I'll ask them, what is my next question going to be? Because the goal here is I start out by asking the questions, but then I want them to take over, and they are going to start asking the questions and learning the sequence of questioning on their own, self-questioning. So 2 300s is going to be 600, and then 2 2000s is 4,000. And then we're going to look at this place, and I say, what's the next question going to be? And they're going to say, if they'll say the wrong thing a couple of times, I go, what? What is this again? And they'll say, oh, it's 10 groups with 5 in each group. And they'll continue, and I'll say, what's the next question? And they'll tell me 10 groups with 40 in each group, 10 300s, and then 10 2000s. You can see this is what we call expanded notation. And expanded notation is simply called seeing each one of these units as 300 instead of a 3. And it's going to reinforce them. There's so many other phases to this that I could show you. For example, I always come up with a story. I could show you how we do that. I could also show you how I have them flip it. I asked them if they could start on this side of the problem and still get the right answer. So we really challenge that algorithm that you have to start here, because when you're doing it like this, could you start with 10 times 2,000? Could you do that and still get the right answer? So again, challenging and giving them multiple ways of solving the problems that they have in front of them. This is going to help them so much on the SAT and the ACT, because those types of problems are usually more critical thinking. They have to look at number sense and place value to answer those kinds of questions, rather than just remembering a memorized algorithm. So that is my long division strategy. All right. So let me give you one more little end of my story. So my 6 children came through my homeschool program. We did use some different math programs in the higher school and in high school. Professor Barrett does have materials through algebra too, but we were not aware of those at the time. And so we were using other algebra. And I have 6 children, and they've all graduated from college. Well, I have 2 graduating this May and next month. And they have all been highly successful in math. So I have a biomedical engineer, I have an electrical engineer, and both of them had math minors. I have an accounting major, a social work major, and a counseling psychology major. So all 6 kids were able to succeed through school. And I feel like they really did have a solid foundation in thinking skills. They all did great on their standardized tests, except for the 2 that have disabilities, and we were able to get accommodations, and they were able still to make it into college. So it was really, really a great journey for me. Again, I really credit Dr. Barrett's work and the way he created the wording in his books to match how our brains are designed to learn, with meaning, with contextualized meaning, so that we're not just depending on memorizing fragmented skills. So I really want to teach you one more. This is going to address base 10 thinking skills. I remember when I was a kid in school, we learned base 5. We had to add, subtract, multiply, and divide using base 5 problems. And I understood base 10 for the first time when I had to do it in base 5, when I had to do base 5. And I really feel like that can be a beneficial exercise, but I haven't ever taught that since I was taught that as a kid. I never have taught that to other kids. But let me show you my column adding strategy. And this is one way that we are able to develop this type of base 10 thinking. So come up with a column of numbers. Sorry, this is a little out of focus. I'm working on focus here. Let's ask our kids if we're going to add this column of numbers, but here's the questioning strategy that we use. So I asked them to look at this first number 7 and ask this question: what does 7 need to become a 10? They say a 3. I said, well, let's borrow the 3 from this 4 and make the 7 a 10. What would we have left? A 1. So which is easier, to add 7 and 4 or 10 and 1? 10 and 1. So we have 11. What does 11 need to become the next highest 10? It needs a 9 to be a 20. That's right. So we can see that when we add 9 to 21, we have to 11, we have 20. 20 plus 5, well, that's easy, 25. What does 25 need to become a 30? It needs a 5. Let's borrow the 5, make this a 30, and we can see that we would have 1 left over. So the answer here is 31. Again, we would just proceed down the column in this way, and the kids continuously find ways to regroup to make 10s mentally. Later, when they are regrouping to make 10s in their multiplication, subtraction, other kinds of calculations, this is a habit. It's a pattern, and they are seeing the place value in the quantity, the quantitative meaning of these numbers as they work through their questions. Again, this is just one phase of this particular skill, and there are ways to introduce this at an easier level, and then there's ways to take this to a higher level. Often in my tutoring, after a child has worked through this type of activity until they're very proficient, I'll do this. And then I say, let's do it again. And now it's just that slight degree higher of complexity to try to continue to hold on to an extra 10 each time and add that in. So again, you can scale this and continue it to be the appropriate level of challenge for your student.